Who will be on pole for RCI's 6 hours of Barcelona in 1 week's time? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Super Pole Saturday for round number 5 of the RCI 2022 World Tour. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck and Stewie behind the cameras for 30 minutes of qualifying, immediately followed by a Super Pole session for the fastest 10 teams. Tim Peck, welcome into Super Pole qualifying. Turns out we didn't run you off after your first Super Pole. Welcome back.
You certainly didn't. I did heavily enjoy the first Super Bowl I watched. I think it was all the way back at Nürburgring at the start of the season, so definitely got a bit of catching up to do, but I do love a good qualifying session, and this might be a controversial comment, Jesse, but Spain is actually one of my favourite tracks on the second quarter.
Well, that certainly will be controversial. We had a controversial start to the day as well. Some of you teams out there will have spotted it. The server was not set up nor configured correctly. The session was almost at Monza. Spain and Italy, two completely different places. Same continent, though, but near as makes no difference. We got all the bugs taken care of, and we are at the correct racetrack. And, well, the weather, we didn't know exactly what to expect today, but it's looking like the weather's going to hold out. It's absolutely picturesque thus far.
It is. It's looking absolutely amazing on the weather front, which I think a lot of people probably weren't expecting. As you said, Jesse, like a lot of people on the practice servers in particular were preparing for the rain. So I think everyone here was expecting just to log on, see the rain and go, all right, we'll get this done. But instead they're getting lots of sun, which means all of those track times are going to be going very fast through. We're currently watching Max Wojna. They're currently driving the RCI car for us today, as Boothby is not here. I think last time I watched Boothby in the 992, but you can see now just trying to hook up these corners. And I will say, I prefer qualifying in the dry, Jesse, because you just get so much more out of the cars.
Well, I always appreciate a wet qualifying simply because it is the great equalizer, but today I do agree. I prefer it in the dry because it's going to trouble this team. Max Wojna is in the 992. The very first time this season we've seen somebody in the car other than Malinowski or George Boothby. Both of those drivers are away on other duties, we're pretty sure, this weekend. That has left Wojna in the car for qualifying, and I'm pretty sure if Wojna does the qualifying, they actually have to do a stint in the race because this officially enters them in the race as a driver. I have to look that up, but we'll probably bring you that a little bit more later. Actually, I'm being told that isn't the case. Max Wojna can do the qualifying and not race. Wojna might be the savior. But part of the thing, Tim, about it being dry qualifying, I think it's going to be very interesting for this team, regardless who's in it. It's a Porsche, it's Barcelona. Mixed results abound, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of trying to find as good a position as possible. Obviously, Wojna's filling in for the other two drivers, so there's pressure there to still do well. But obviously, if they don't put it on pole, it's not going to be the end of the world because at the end of the day, they're doing them a favour, Jesse. So I think for Wojna here, it's just get as high as you possibly can. Don't worry too much about exactly where you're positioning in, but ideally within that top 10, like to make it to Super Bowl would be the goal in my mind, because that just secures you a better start. And with 6 hours, I mean, it's not our longest endurance race, Jesse. That's not as much time to climb through the pack as the other races.
Yeah, in fact, it's just about the shortest you're going to see in the World Tour. 6 hours coming at you this time next weekend, but this will go a long way to set the grid. It's not one of the more difficult tracks to qualify or move through the field, but even so, top 10 starting spot on the line for everybody in the upcoming session. This is, of course, just the end of practice, the shakedown, if you will, before the 30-minute session goes live. A lot of drivers taking their final moments trying to hone the car setup in, and here we are, folks, 30 minutes, 8 a.m., 18 degrees C on the track, 14 ambient, optimum track to start with. Let's get going for group qualifying for round number 5. And well, your guess is absolutely as good as mine. I saw Robin Schaefer in the 411 up at the top of the board. It was very impressive from the T3 Motorsport Black team early.
I was going to say Schaefer was on top throughout the entirety of the practice there and had a fairly decent gap the next couple of cars behind. Of course, it's practice, so you don't know what everyone's doing. Some might be on the lowest fuel possible, some might be doing other things. So it's not as certain as to what's going to happen in the qualifying. But I think Schaefer, having watched them on the Thursday races, Jesse, they've certainly really come up over the last couple of seasons. I think Schaefer will be someone to watch today. I think they are potentially one of the people that could put it on this afternoon.
Very well could be. Of course, the top 10, we're going to take the top 10 regardless of who qualifies in. We have pro and high silver all in the same split for World Tour. We've had that all season. And I believe we set a season high at the 24 a month ago for the most silver cars inside the top 10. I believe we had 5 silver cars inside the top 10. We've had as little as 1, but as many as 5. What do you think, Tim Peck? How many silver cars are going to get into Super Bowl today?
I'm going to say in the middle about 3-ish. Obviously, I think it'd be hilarious to say something like 10. I think that would be a whole new situation if that was to happen. But I think for today, Spain's one of those tracks where I think a lot of people are quite comfortable because it's one of those ones that's easy to learn, hard to master. And I think a lot of the pros today will just be putting out their best performances. So in terms of the split between all the drivers, I think we'll see 3 or 4 silvers sneaking to that top 10.
I think that's a pretty close guess. I'm going to go on the high end. I'm going to say we're going to match last race. We're going to have half of the top 10 silver cars is what I'm going to go with. And keep in mind, you get points for qualifying in the lead of both of those classes, I'm pretty sure. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes for the both of them. But the first lap's being laid down right now. Not quite the urgency that we're used to, is it, Tim, with a 10-minute session as per usual. If you're lucky, you get 15. Heck, you've got twice as much time here, 30 minutes to set a lap in. No panic whatsoever, I would think.
No, I think it definitely makes it a bit easier on a lot of the teams. But the other thing you've got to sort of bear in mind here is what's the best strategy? I mean, some people go out and try and do the entire 30 minutes on one fuel set. Most teams will opt into going out twice, maybe even 3 times, and just really wearing down the tires as quickly as possible on lower fuel to get the quicker laps out. And I don't know, it all comes down to the strategy and what each individual person decides what they want to do right now. I think personally, if it was me, I'm maybe going out for the first 10-15 minutes, setting in a banker lap that feels safe, and then I'm going out again for the last 15 minutes, fresh set of tires, really pushing the car to the limit and just seeing if I can get a new personal best.
Everybody is going to be trying to set a really good benchmark here, and usually I'm preaching calm and patience as Wajna goes provisional pole, a 43.240. The Vinza Hacker second place. That's a silver car thus far. De Havilland comes in third, and you've got the 747 Bentley in fourth place, but everything changing as Garrett Fisher goes top of the board in that BMW, a new quickest time, less than half a tenth, 43/100ths quicker than the 992 thus far. It's game on early.
Yeah, it's definitely a close fight already, especially up there at the top. But like I was saying just now, Jesse, this is really just the banker lap. This is making sure you get a lap that's good and it gives you a chance to stay high. But this isn't the lap you're relying on to put you in the top 10. This is just making sure that you've got a decent lap that will qualify you in an okay position at least. And it wouldn't surprise me if within the next 3 or 4 laps, a lot of these cars will break in that 142 mark, because at the moment I think Fisher just set 143.197. So I think within the next 10 minutes or so we'll see people really start to break into that 142 area and set a lot faster times.
Well, you don't often see this, but it's quite interesting. Martin Grady, also known as Tidgney, is in our chat. He's requesting that we give his teammate Joe McCauley a stop and go 60. Tidge, you can't give somebody a stop and go 60. And on top of that, that's your teammate. I don't I don't know what the strategy is there, but quite interesting there as well. They've been an interesting team to watch this entire season, as Mr. Grady and McCauley, and well, certainly one of the teams that we came into the World Tour. I wanted to pay very close attention to. Schaefer goes top of the board. They were top of the board in that very short abbreviated practice, and they've done just that. Almost on cue, Tim Peck, you said we were flirting with the 42s, and it would continue to come down, and it has 42.967. T3 Motorsport Black back to the top of the board. Can anyone best that? I would imagine they're going to absolutely make a run at it. In fact, they already have. Jonathan Riley, Volante Racing Sim Sports goes 42.925, 42/100ths quicker than T3.
Yeah, I think we're just going to keep seeing this now for the next few minutes. So in comes Dubil with a 142.827. So they've almost gone a tenth of a second faster. It's actually 9800ths. They've gone faster than the 70 McLaren there. So the Ferrari really found the pace here, it seems, already. It's a silver car as well, which is worth noting, Jesse, because this Ferrari 500, I've seen him in a lot of places in this World Tour, but on pole, that's not one of them. I would be interested to see what they can do today, because Ferrari in Spain, it's a good combination, and the car just seems to love it in the sweeping corners here. So I think now's a chance for Dubil to really push that car and see how high up on the leaderboard they can start.
Well, when you have such a long session like this, the urgency I talked about is just not there. But the longer you get into the session and the further down the board you are, maybe you are a Martin Lawrence, a Tavinza Hacker, a Bullwinkle, you're a little worried right now because you're not quite where you need to be. If you are a Barrera, a Schaefer, a Riley, or an Adam Dubil, who has gone provisional pole in the 500 Ferrari, a 42.827, a tenth quicker than Jonathan Riley and Volante, an excellent qualifying lap there. If you are those top couple of cars, you're a little less concerned because you look down at 10th place, you've got a half a second in the bag, and you probably also think too, Tim, oh, I can go faster if I need to.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's worth noting as well, is obviously the top 10 go onto a Super Bowl, Jesse, where they reshuffle the order for the race anyway. So all you've got to do here is you don't necessarily have to be on pole, you just need to be in that top 10. And if you do what Dubil's done and set a time of a 142.8, that's a really good safety net, because that means 10 other cars on the track have set a faster time than you before you fall out of that danger zone. All of this time Dubil can use to push the track further and their time higher, which will just secure it even more. So it's not, for the top 10 drivers, it's not about making sure you're in that pole slot, it's just making sure your time's fast enough that other people struggle to push you out of the top 10.
Well, as they continue to qualify here, I just want to extend my my sincerest thank yous to the entire team here at RCI. This was a fraught undertaking today. We're short-handed here, if we're completely honest, but even still, we have our lovely stewarding department and our broadcast department bringing you the sights and the sounds of Super Bowl. And we thank all the different departments who made this possible, because quite frankly, an hour ago, it was very touch and go on how it was all going to come together. You saw Yannick Rombach there in the GC Racing 514 get all out of sorts in turns 14 and 15. That will not help you on the timing table. Tim Peck, anything strike you as strange about this qualifying in the first 10 minutes?
It's just really the biggest surprise has been the mixture of the cars in the top 10. I mean, we were talking about beforehand how many silvers we can see. Currently, you're winning the bet, Jesse. There are 5 silvers in that top 10. Of course, there's a lot of time left to go, but you know, with 20 minutes, it's still pretty impressive that in the first photo qualifying, they've really mixed up that top 10. One thing I was actually going to point out as well is how close all of the cars are in general. I mean, all the way from 1st to 18th, they're within a second of each other, and you know, that just shows the level of driving here. The skill set is so similar that you've really got to find every extra tenth you can just to even gain 2, even 3 positions. And that's something that a lot of these drivers are going to be very nervous about going into the final part of this qualifying session. Is they need to find those extra tenths that just put themselves above the rest, because you can put yourself in the top 10, but if you don't have that extra tenth from someone else, you could be pushed all the way down to 50.
No, I mean, right, you are. I think it speaks not only to the drivers, but the track as well. Like it or hate it, Barcelona always seems to deliver this kind of action. And it's simply because of the nature of the course. If your car is really good in the twisty bits, as Fisher goes P3 and P2 in the pro class, a 42.942 for the Butterfly Effect Esports team. That will do them just nicely. But no, this track lends itself very well to a lot of different cars, depending on what section of the track that you're on. Got that very nice long pitch straight, of course. You got very fast sweeping corners and also some technical ones as well. So no matter what your car does best, there is a little bit of that for you. And I think more than anything, that also helps keep it very close as well. And you also have to factor in the drivers here. These are the best of the best in the World Tour. And typically speaking, in a session like this, you're likely going to have your team's fastest driver in there at all costs. Keep in mind, these teams can swap drivers mid-qualifying session as well. We've seen that a couple of times. Very early on into the season as well, it was more common. Certain drivers getting a taste of the qualifying and swapping out, but they can do that. Going to the pit lane, putting another driver in, though, has become less of a factor the further we went into the season.
Well, I think obviously the person who starts off in the car almost builds up a momentum for themselves. So, I mean, if you're the one that gets in the car and just starts doing the laps, and the more you go across the session, the more confident you become in the track. Like, your brain's tuned to where you can and can't go, where you can push the limits. And I think that's something that lends itself to maybe not switching your drivers mid-qualifying. But then again, it could also go the other way. Let's say you get in the car, you're doing some laps and you're really just not feeling it. You can't seem to find the grip, if you will, where you usually can. You're not finding a speed where you think you can. So it might be then a case of saying, okay, I'm not feeling it right now. Let's try putting in someone else, seeing if they can get us a bit higher on the leaderboard. And I think it's one of those things where you got to weigh up: is the driver that's currently in the car in their zone? Have they got the momentum to keep going, or do they think that maybe they can't get out their best performance today?
Well, speaking of best performances, nobody has been able to best the Polish-based Forza Italia Ferrari team. They still sit atop the timing board. They're looking pretty good right about now. Even if somebody were to knock them off, Tim, you mentioned it earlier, it doesn't matter if you qualify on pole for the session. You don't get points for that. Just need to be inside the top 10. Tavinza Hacker, the last car in the 818 BMW. That would get in there. Bullwinkle in the 89 BMW would fall just one space short, and even more frustrating than that, if it doesn't change, they would be 8/1000ths outside the top 10. Frustrating indeed. Joe McCauley has yet to put a lap on the board that has counted so far. I don't know if Joe needs some glasses or directions, but either way, the number 18 hashtag blame Mike Jones Bentley, he made the only car that has not set a time thus far.
Well, that's the other thing, Jesse, as we were talking about earlier. 30 minutes of qualifying, you've got a long time, so you don't have to stress about the rush and where your track position is. But if you're doing what Joe McCauley's doing right now, they've only got 15 minutes left. That's basically the qualifying sessions we do here at RCI anyway. And now they do have to worry about getting that lap in and making sure it's good. They've still not set a lap yet, and if the reason for that is because they've been pushing it too wide in the corners, I know turn 3 here, very easy to just put your foot on the throttle too quickly and not lift off, so you'll go wide and you'll invalidate your time. If that's what's happening to Joe McCauley here, then of course they need to change up their driving style, maybe put their foot on the accelerator a bit later, maybe lift off. That then sort of ruins their lap almost, and they can only set bank a lap. So McCauley, I think it would be a good idea just to get a time on the board quickly, because you don't want to be getting into that final 5 minutes and still be worrying about the fact that you've not managed to get a valid lap in yet.
Well, Volante has gone back to the top. Jonathan Riley has put the number 70 McLaren on provisional pole, though that will not matter, but it's still a lot of comfort. A 42.7 for Volante, and Dubil has been knocked back to third place. The number 200 has gone to P2, and I was trying to find the 200 on the list. Did they? No, there they are. The Butterfly Effect Esports team. They are currently P2. And I thought for a second they missed the 24, but they haven't. They're just in a. They actually qualified P10 for that race in the 24. So doing a little bit better today, I would say. 87 100s off of the pole position. Dubil is 97 100s, only getting tighter at the top.
It is getting very tight, and what I want to draw your attention to, Jesse, is the bottom section of that top 10, where you've got de Havilland, Barrera, and Lawrence. They're quite close in time as well, specifically to the people just outside the top 10. That 747 Bentley, they are waiting to strike. If they improve by just 200ths of a second, that's them into the top 10. So you've got to be really, really careful if you are in that top 10 right now. You need to make sure you're still improving those times, because realistically, other than the top three, I'd say none of them are too safe yet. Well, we're currently on board with Dubil as they finish off their lap. They are slightly up on their time, although it looks like the delta has just gone red. They were about a tenth up on their time. That would have been just enough to put them on that provisional pole. But Jesse, like I was saying, if you're in the top 10 right now, you need to be pushing into those 142s, because otherwise you're just not safe.
It's absolutely correct. Joe McCauley, though, I think we should give a standing ovation because the hashtag blame Mike Jones team has finally put a lap on the board, and what a lap it was. It was a lap good enough to get them P5. Joe will be pretty happy with that thus far. Maybe dig for a little bit more. If you are in the top half of the top 10 right now, Tim, do you start thinking about, okay, maybe we start getting ready for Super Bowl? Maybe because we had an abbreviated practice coming into qualifying today because of the back end technical gremlins that we had. Do you maybe use the last 12 minutes of this as almost a test session for the Super Bowl at this point? Maybe try some stuff.
Yeah, what I'd do in this situation is I'd put on some really low fuel amount, maybe enough for 3-4 laps, put on a new pair of tyres, and then just start absolutely pelting it around the track, really pushing the car to the limits, taking it almost as wide as you possibly can, where you can get the most amount of speed. I think it's a good time to test that turn 3 out, honestly, and see what part of the car you need to put the accelerator on first in order to really get through that corner the most amount of speed. So I agree. I think now, if you're in that top 5, you've got a little bit of a barrier. Now's the time to just start doing really low fuel runs and seeing if you can find that perfect lap ready for the Super Bowl.
I think it's certainly something that all these teams will be considering. De Havilland comes across the line and still just barely inside the top 10. Precarious position for the 349. What does Yannick Rombach have? The 514 GC Racing team. This might be no, was not an improvement. Lost some time at the end of the lap, and that is so very common. It happened to Dubil as well. They were up by as much as 2/10 and lost it all. That turn 14, 15, and 16 complex. Doesn't matter how fast you are through the first couple of sectors if you're going to lose it in the chicane and the run on the front straightaway. You have to have a good run through this section right here.
Yeah, it's this final set of corners, it can make or break the entire lap, and unfortunately it's just one of those ones where you absolutely have to nail it. If you go into it slightly too tightly, then you completely ruin your exit. Go into it too wide, then you're just losing unnecessary amounts of speed. So you've got to make sure that final 2 corners, you absolutely nail them. We can see Justin Hooley coming through them now. Is this going to be an improvement on their time? They're currently up by a couple of attempts. This will be enough to put them into the top 10, I believe, once they cross the line. And oh, we're just going to be outside by 5,000ths of a second. Justin Hooley puts it in 11th. But Jesse, it's there. The time's there for that number 40. But you can see now just how important it is to get every single millisecond possible.
Tristan Bullwinkle ran a quicker lap there as well, and I'm pretty sure our provisional pole sitters ran a quicker lap for Volante as well. I'm pretty sure that was a nice 42.69 that they ran on their previous lap. That puts them a 10th clear of second place. We see Rombach again in the 514 looking to pick up. Lost a lot of time on the previous lap. Have they fixed the issue? Oh, not quite. 3/100ths off of their quickest lap, struggling to find a better lap here, and time now starting to tick away. The final 9.5 minutes. I've been preaching this entire qualifying session up to this point of not panicking, keeping your calm and your cool. Now, if you're outside of that top 10 or if you're just inside of that top 10, panic mode activated.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd say even if you're in the top 10, I think realistically top 5 are safe, I'd say, right now. But of course, even then, that's up for debate. But I'd say the top 5 are the safest. Anything from 6 below, Jesse, is all up for grabs in this final qualifying session. And it would not surprise me in the slightest if coming into the last 5 minutes, we just see a complete mix-up in that top 10 positions. I mean, I remember back in Nürburgring, we were watching it, and every second a car crossed the line and the top 10 order would change. So you really have to make sure now you're finding as much time as possible. And the thing is if those people in the bottom 5 of the top 10 start finding time and are pushing into the 142s, then you've got the people at the very top that have to worry as well. So definitely not a time to start taking it easy. You need to make sure you are still pushing for those fast laps because you only have 9 minutes left to do so.
Getting down to it, the final few laps for all of these teams, it'll be somewhere around 4 to 5 for the majority of them. A couple of cars that are in a threat to fall out of the top 10. Washington in the 992, they're in the pit lane. Martin Lawrence for CLR also into the pit lane, and they will be looking to make some sort of changes, as I believe that was Volante Racing abandoning a lap, but in the most dramatic way possible, going the length of the sand trap and hitting the wall as hard as possible. That was Volante. But we ride on board the Forza Italia e-racing car. Adam Dubiel, who was up on their time but dreaded 13, 14, 15, and 16, has struck again. They've lost all their time again.
That's the thing is, I think I've seen a lot of people in this session in particular, Jesse, they're nailing those first couple of corners, they're getting so much time gain, they're almost 2 tenths up at times on their best laps. And then in that final sector, you're just seeing one slight mess up and you lose all of that time completely. I think 3 or 4 of the cars in this session have been struggling from that so far. And I was going to mention earlier, we were watching Rambash as they tried to get themselves up into the better positions. I've been watching them for a while. Every time they do a lap, they're about 4 tenths up, and they've got massive improvements that would put them into a really good position, but they just get into the final set of corners. I'm not sure if it's because they did it really well the first time round, or if they just can't seem to get it right now, but they lose all of that time again. So for a lot of these drivers, I think the goal is now is if you gain time, you've got to worry about making sure you do every single corner the same, and maybe not necessarily push it to try and make it better. Just keep the time you've gained at the beginning of the lap.
Yeah, it's certainly the case. I mean, like I said earlier, you make up all this time and then you lose it at the end. Maybe, I don't know, a little less aggressive at the end. And even if you are Dubiel and Forza Italia, this is something that you're going to have to fix in the very short interim between this and Super Bowl. We don't expect the 500 to fall out of the top 10, barring some crazy chain of events. But even still, you have to find that extra 10th or so to give you a shot at the pole position. And this is where it all is, this section right here, where they've lost it the last 5 consecutive laps in a row. And, well, unfortunately, it's not got any better. They've done it again.
The thing I'm thinking here, Jesse, is that right now you've got Dubiel. They're in that top 3. We've been talking about how good a qualifying session they've had so far. But what I want to ask is, what's it been like? Because it's all very well setting a really fast time in 30-minute quali, but in Super Bowl, you get 1 lap, and that is it. So if you can't do your fastest lap in that 1 lap alone, you're going to be right at the bottom of that top 10. So what I want to see here is the cars that are in the top 10, I want to know who's been the most consistent out of them all? Because I think Dubil has been a little bit all over the place with the lap times they've been setting. Like you were saying, that's something they need to polish up before the Super Bowl session, because you can't go into that and not have a clean final sector. You need to make sure that you have a way to do that final sector without losing so much time from your best.
You only get one lap in Super Bowl. It's not a session. It is one lap, or as I like to call it, an lap. That's all you get, and you have to get everything you possibly can and not lose any time. You cannot leave anything on the table. Joe McCauley's certainly not leaving anything on the table. That's P2 for the hashtag Blame Mike Jones car, the most agreeable team name in the paddock for sure. 28 100ths off of Riley's time up in front. That was excellent. From the last car to set a valid lap to P2, not bad at all.
Not bad indeed, and a really good lap there from McCauley. But again, I'm going to bring up the same question: is what happens when it comes to the Super Bowl? We watched McCauley 15 minutes in, they still did not have a valid lap, Jesse, and that's something else that you've got to really be careful of in the Super Bowl. Is you need to make sure your lap is valid. You only get one. If you invalidate it, that's it. That is your entire time gone, and you will start at the bottom of the top 10. So, particularly in Spain, it's a track to be careful on. There are a lot of places here where you can invalidate your lap just by simply pushing it a little too far. That corner that we've just watched, I don't know what to call it. It's not really a chicane, but it kind of feels like one when you're driving it. But if you go too much on the curb in that, and it's very easy to do so, you invalidate your lap as well. So you've got to be really careful here at Spain. In the Super Bowl, what I'm waiting to see is you can be consistent with their times. You can get that valid without pushing too far.
Final few minutes of group qualifying. As soon as the session is over, 11th on back will be set for the 6 hours of Barcelona. Harley Chamberlain for the front left tire scrubber esports team goes P14 and will give themselves at least 2 more shots at getting inside the top 10. I'm looking at the 501 Audi. Barrera in that car qualifying again this race as well. And, well, it was fantastic for them in the qualifying session. The race didn't go their way. I think we could all agree. But they qualified 3rd overall. They were the fastest silver car in the qualifying for the 24 a month ago. And they're right there on the cusp, on the verge of not qualifying into Super Bowl today. They need less than half a tenth is all they need, Tim Peck, to get themselves into that Super Bowl.
That is all they need, but then we go back to what we were saying before, Jesse, that you need the safety net as well. I mean, we're coming into the final 2 minutes of qualifying, all of these guys, all the way down to, I'd say, about 15th, or further 16th, down to 16th. All they need to do is gain 2 tenths a second, and they are in that top 10. So they really need to fight and see how much of a safety net they can give themselves, because unless you're in that top 5 right now, you're looking in a very, very sketchy position. And honestly, you can't count out. One person who's on a great lap here is on your screen right now. Corbin is about to cross the line. They are a couple of attempts up on their time so far. This should be enough to just sneak them into the top 10. And it will put them 7th. This is exactly what I mean, Jesse. A 2/10 improvement takes someone from 15th to 7th. You're not safe if you're in that 6th to 15th slot right now.
No, you're absolutely not. And for turn 1, SSR, that was brilliant. Qualified 27th in the last round and might be headed to Super Bowl. A couple of cars are going to have to dodge the bullets here. James de Havilland, VRM Racing Team, they've been flirting with the top 10, and they will stay there. That was an improvement of 43.115. But honestly, I agree with you, Tim. I couldn't agree more. If you want to guarantee Super Bowl, you might need to run that 42.
And you've got less than a minute now to set that time. Most people on track, apart from the ones crossing the line, they're on their last lap right now. I'd say from maybe 137, you can see them currently just coming out of the, well, they're in the middle of the second sector now, but probably on their final lap as it stands. Or here's the 349. This will be their final lap before they have to come in, but they're currently 3 tenths up on their time, Jesse, and that would be good enough to put them into what we're considering right now the safety net of the 1:42 time. So we'll see if de Havilland can manage to keep this time up. It's also worth mentioning, as we're just watching them come through these sectors, that Wojna, currently in 9th ahead of them. We were talking earlier about how Wojna's filling in for Boothby and Malnowski in the 992 Porsche. They're currently only 9th, and they do not have that safety net, so they need to make sure they're pushing for better times as well, just to secure that top 10 finish, because I'm sure the boys would like to come back and see that 992 made it to the Super Pole at least.
Keep in mind that car for the 24, it qualified very poorly. Actually, no, it qualified on pole position. Excuse me, it qualified very poorly for the Laguna Seca race is the one that I'm recalling. But de Havilland, who was on a absolute flyer, I feel like has lost all of that time. And unfortunately, they will not get another lap. Oh my goodness, it was close. They were 2/100 slower on that lap. They're going to have to hold their breath is the 349 McLaren team, as everybody else is gunning behind them, but still fighting inside the top 5, inside the top 10 in general. Robin Schaefer had an excellent lap, but I'm afraid was a little too wayward coming to the line. You can't give up in turn 16. It is a turn after all. It might be the most important one because it leads to one of the longest straights in ACC. Joe McCauley is the only car that's not in the garage. Everybody else has come in. Keep in mind, there's no points on offer for this, but Joe might be looking to send a message here by taking Riley and Volante Racing, and he does! Hashtag blame Mike Jones, goes P1, last the first challenge. Joe McCauley didn't need to do that. He's just showing off.
That was a statement drive. Joe McCauley right there was secured in 2nd place. Everyone else was either finished with quali or in the garage, and they just go and one up Riley just to show them that it is possible to put it on pole. And I mean, Jesse, now going to the Super Bowl, if you're Riley, you're thinking, okay, I'm not the fastest in this session. I've got a car to beat now, so any confidence that might have been there may have just been shaken a little bit. But as for your top 10, well, I'll let you talk about it, Jesse, but these are the guys going through into the next round.
Hashtag blame Mike Jones is the #1 qualifier. Volante Racing second. Of course, the 200 team in there as well. Fantastic job by Butterfly Effect, Forza Italia, and the 411, of course, with Robin Schaefer behind the wheel. Those are your top 5. Behind them, the 404 connection lost. We didn't cover them much at the end. They were in danger for a while, but they definitely picked it up into 6. Corbin was able to get the 101 BMW into 7th place. Tavinza Hacker did a good job in the 818. Wajna did get the Yazheat car inside the Super Pole, and de Havilland in the 349 had to hold their breath there in that McLaren for a little while, but it didn't make a difference. Nobody else could best them. Those are your Super Pole cars. Every position behind 10th place is now final. That's where all of these teams will start in the 6 hour next week. Incredible stuff. Look at the purple sector times. Nobody has more than one. And again, a confirmation of the car starting 11th on back. Well, we have had a huge championship up to this point. It's been dominated by one team, but let's take a look at the championship standings as they run into Super Bowl qualifying tonight. Yaz Heat has dominated the series. They've got a very nice lead, 169 points to the name. T3 Motorsport Black has done such a good job keeping up in the 411 BMW, 109 points. Volante Racing has slipped back to 3rd in the 70 with 94.5 points. Behind them, the hashtag blame Mike Jones team, 74.5 points. Jardier Community team done a fantastic job. They had a brilliant race at the 24 in the number 40 AMR V8 Vantage, 62.5 points for them. Behind them, Pace Hub, NSN Racing, Orion Race Team, Weeshite, and Butterfly Effect. Your top 10 in pro. And we got a dead tie for ninth place as well there. Behind them, Phoenix Racing Black with 30 points, Giga Chad with 27.5, Grid Finder on 27.5 as well, a dead tie for 12th place. SR Esports with 8 points, Team Ballas Ukraine with 2, and Bannon Racing with 1 point. Every other team on this list has retired from the championship. And of course, it's not just about the pro drivers, there's silver drivers and teams as well. CLR has made it very interesting this season. They've had some come from behind wins and some excellent runs, and they have 129 and a half points. Does the 404 McLaren Madhouse Racing, the Canadian outfit, and the 818 BMW, 111 points, keeping CLR honest up front. And then you've got Forza Italia. My mind wonders if things had gone a little bit differently for the Polish 500 Ferrari team, what could have been, but they're holding in there tough in third, 76 and a half points. VRM Racing in fourth place with 74, and GC Racing rounds out your top five with 72. Very close race for third there, if you ask me. Front left tire scrubber esports in the 781 Bentley, 69 and a half. That's a very nice total for them. Sensible Racing has 65 and a half points. T3 Motorsport White, the silver T3 Motorsport team, with 61 and a half points. Sims and Riggs on 41 and a half, and ending your top 10, the Flying Hellfish team with 39 and a half points. Back half of the silver grid looks a little like this. 11th place, JL Motorsport Esports, 24 and a half. Turn 102 team with 22 points. Ledge Racing at the 34 with 21 and a half. Turn 1 SSR that put on a show here early in the group qualifying. That BMW, 21 points. XBD Emerald Racing with 18 points. Fusion DMH number 1 in the 501 Audi, 16 and a half points. Green Loafus Engineering with 11. And in 18th place, Revolution Sim Racing Blue with 10. And you guessed it, everyone else has retired from the championship. Some of you at home may be wondering why the half points. Well, we had a race that didn't go the distance earlier in the season. Half points were awarded. That sometimes that literally meant half a point was awarded. Tim Peck, there's still time in the championship, a couple of rounds left to go, and there's a lot of places that are very close. The pro battle for third place, the silver battle for third place as well. Fights inside the top five. The silver championship not decided. And if Yaz Heat has a bad race here next week in the 6 hour, that pro battle for the championship can look very differently as well as we go into the last round.
Yeah, there's definitely still a lot to play for. You've got 2 races left, Barcelona, and then, I believe it's Zolder is the final race of the season, 12 hours, I think. So it's absolutely, there's still loads of points left to gain. And as you said, one bad race for Yasi could completely change everything up for them as well as all the other battles across the leaderboard currently. So coming into these final 2 races, definitely not a chance to give up. And even if those opportunities don't appear for you, it's a good idea to start preparing for next season, honestly, and just seeing what works for your team, what doesn't, and how good you can do on some of these tracks. I mean, these are 2 very technical tracks, I'd say. Zolder in particular can really change up a leaderboard. So there's a lot of opportunity here, Jesse, just to change around the points a bit and see what you can do.
Well, for right now, the mindset is this. We've done the 30-minute group qualifying session. Positions 11 through 20 whatever are set for the 6 hour in 1 week's time. The top 10 fastest drivers will do battle one at a time, 1 lap each to set the top 10 for the 6 hour. And nothing is more I, I don't know exactly how to put it, Tim. I'm trying to think of a word. It anxiety and a little bit of nervous stomach, I would say, doing this because you know you are the only car anyone's focusing on. Your team, the broadcast here at RCI TV, everyone in chat, the stewards, everybody. Nobody is paying attention to anybody but you. It's a feeling unlike any other in sim racing.
It's a lot of pressure to have, and when you've only got one lap to do basically the best you can possibly do, that's definitely a lot of pressure, and it's something you have to really keep cool. Make sure you don't let it get to you, and that you do continue to get in the best lap possible. Now, some teams actually currently watching on the tracker here, and I think some teams may be changing their drivers. This might just be whilst the thing catches up, but I was going to say this might be the time if you are thinking about doing a driver swap in quali. Maybe the time to do so. Maybe you've got one driver that can do a really, really fast time, but they can only do it one every 10 laps. You put them in for the 30 minutes and make sure you get into that top 10. Then you swap them out, you put in someone who's just really, really consistent, but maybe isn't your fastest, and you just make sure that you get through that Super Bowl session with a decent lap time. And that's something I want to see here is I don't necessarily want to see the fastest times we've seen so far. I just want to see consistent good times. I will be surprised. Every time we get into the 142s here, I will be surprised by it because I think realistically, we're just looking at 143s as people set a lap that's good enough to put them somewhere higher in that top 10.
Justin Hooley joined us in chat to commiserate, said they had a 43 flat in there, just couldn't hook it up. You and about 20 other teams, Justin, don't get down, head up. It was a difficult final third sector for a lot of teams. We could see that on our timing screens as well. And there's always the race. It may be the shortest endurance race of the World Tour, but still 6 hours, a lot of things can happen, and they will do around this particular racetrack. It's one of those tracks where you can get quite a bit of racing done, and we expect to see that in one weekend's time. Just getting everything set up. The top 10 teams are being rearranged. They will qualify in reverse order, meaning that the 10th place qualifying car from group will go first, and Macaulay, who was the quickest car in the group stage, will be the last car to qualify. Talked about all the pressure, talked about all the buildup of this being the only car that anyone's ever focusing on. It's a lonely old feeling, and Joe Macaulay has the unenviable position of being the car that we talk about by being the quickest car in that group stage, and it's all on them. They'll have 9 cars go before them, and he knows the only reason they won't get pole position, it's all his fault if that ends up that way. By the way, we've been hoodwinked by this before, Tim Peck. A lot of times when the session restarts, the driver changes in the car. So we'll have to play it by ear and see. We have had driver changes in Super Pole before, but we've also been bitten by that in the past. It's a fun little mini game for us up here to guess who's actually driving.
Yeah, I was looking at that and I was thinking, is this just my eyes playing tricks on me, or have some of these teams actually opted into changing their driver? Just looking actually at the top 10, Jesse, and I think you might have won today's little gamble, as I believe there are 5 silver cars in the top 10, which makes it an even 50-50 split between the two classes here. So well done to you for guessing that right. And honestly, it's nice to see. But going into the top 10 now, going into the Super Bowl, this is where everything changes. If there's one thing I remember from the Nürburgring, is that just because you were the fastest in the 30-minute quali does not mean that you're going to be the fastest in the Super Bowl. Obviously, you've got to do your perfect lap here. That's a factor. You've also got people will be going faster. There may be different drivers in the car that are going to go faster or even slower at times. There's so much that can change in this, and people who came in that 10th place position might be the ones at the end of the day to bring home pole. So it's still all to play for here. And just because we already know where they placed originally in that top 10 doesn't mean we know how the Super Bowl is going to turn out.
Twice in the 4 races thus far, the fastest car in the group stage did not qualify on the pole position in Super Pole. In fact, at Laguna Seca, we got the shock of our life as Orion Racing and a Nissan GTR took the pole position away from everybody. I didn't see that coming. Nobody saw that coming. I was ecstatic about that. Of course, that car not in the race today. I believe they pulled out of the remainder of the championship. But even still, the point is anything is possible, anything can happen. Just getting the final prep done as the race director on the racetrack is directing the teams, letting them know what they can expect. And of course, it'll be on them to release the cars. It'll be a one car at a time to basically, whenever the first car goes around the racetrack and takes the green flag for their one timed lap, at some point, the second car, or the ninth place car, if you will be released out onto the track. I'm also pretty sure they have to go around on their cooldown lap and come back into pit lane. They cannot stop and teleport because that would be considered impeding the car that is on a timed lap. It's very different circumstances. In a normal race here at RCI TV, you are allowed to pull off and teleport to the pit lane and to the garage area. But in Super Pole, not the case, I'm pretty sure. You have to complete your cooldown lap and drive safely into the pit lane.
What happens if you spin out and hit a wall?
Then your team is sad.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I mean, on the like going in lap, do you then get to teleport back to the pits just to get yourself away from the track, or do you still have to return to the pit lane manually and
I
actually drive back there?
Well, we have had on a couple of occasions a car have an issue on the cooldown lap, and in one case, the car stopped on the racetrack. I think they
Oh
ran out
no.
of fuel. They were cutting it so close, and that was a whole issue as well. And I believe we did have one that crashed on their in lap on a wet qualifying session, but they were able to drive it back into the pit lane. I don't know. I'm not a steward on this occasion, but I'm pretty sure they'd be quite lenient for something like that of, oh, well, the car is immobilized at this point, there's nothing we can do. I don't know what they would do. I don't know if they would say, okay, well, now you're starting dead last. I know during the 24 there were several cars that invalidated their quick lap, and obviously it goes whoever invalidates first, I think, is dead last in that case. That was a consideration the stewards had to make for that, for setting up the grid in that race. So hopefully we don't have to deal with that today. I don't think we will have to deal with that today. And even if we do, I don't have to deal with that at all. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad I'm not having to deal with that. But that is a cool thing to think about. Is the whole thing you're saying with Spa, which is where you invalidated the lap, how early did it determine your position? I think that's something that might actually, I mean, I hope it doesn't, don't get me wrong, because obviously for the stewards, that's a pain to work out. But that might come into place today, with Spain being one of those places where if you go slightly too wide, even slightly too tightly on a lot of the corners, you can invalidate your lap very easily. Will be interesting to see how many of these cars do manage to set a valid lap. And then again, you've got to think about if you're going wide, but you got time to save it, so you can lift off slightly. Then you're losing time overall, and you've only got one lap. So then it's going to determine how much time people lose across the thing. So it's definitely there's a lot to have on your mind right now. There's a lot of pressure in making sure that you nail this lap. I think it's going to be interesting to see how each car deals with it. One thing I'm personally quite excited to see, Jesse, is the exit out of the final corner. Now, we talked a lot in the 30 minutes about how you need to make sure you get that final section right because you could lose a lot of time there. Well, in the Super Bowl, you may be thinking, okay, well, it's not as big a deal because if you do it wrong, you do it wrong, that's your lap. But even on the outlap, if you do the final section on your outlap, you've compromised the entire start finish straight, and that is a lot of time you're losing. You could possibly lose seconds there if you mess up that final set of corners.
No, you're absolutely right about that. If you mess up turns 14, 15, and 16, that is the bike chicane, I call it, and turn 16 being the long right hander onto the straight. If you screw that up, you are basically ruining your entire lap. Realistically, to get a good lap time around here, considering you only have the one, you have to get that last three turn complex right twice to make this lap a quick one.
Yeah, you do. You need to make sure it's been absolutely nailed both times, and that in itself can add a lot of pressure, especially coming from a qualifying session where we've just seen a lot of cars fail to get it right more than once in a row. We've seen a lot of cars really struggle to nail that final sector. on laps where they were improving by quite a lot. That's what's going to be playing the biggest on my mind if I was one of the drivers right now, is making sure you get those final corners right. Because if you hit that curb, if you take it too wide and you need to lift off, anything that's going to compromise that start finish straight, you have ruined the entire lap and possibly thrown away your chance at pole.
Well, here is the VRM Racing McLaren. They qualified P10. They will set the benchmark that everyone else will follow. 9 more cars will follow this one. And James de Havilland, I would say, has the most enviable position of all because you're not expecting anything. If you qualify just in P10, then if you out qualify somebody for ninth, you've made a net gain. And even if you invalidate your lap, you're still going to start inside the top 10. This is the most calm, cool, and collected I would expect of any of the drivers today. I would love to have been a fly on the wall of that call between VRM Racing to see what they were thinking about doing. Personally, I would love to know, just go for it, balls to the wall, or just set a nice conservative lap because we expect people to invalidate. Tim Peck, I'm curious your thoughts. What would you have told them if that was your teammate?
Well, in terms of what to do in this session, I'd say, yeah, just push it as hard as you possibly can on this hot lap. Basically, continue the testing out, see what you can do with the car and how hard you can push it. I mean, you've got nothing to lose here. Although, then again, if you do set a safe lap, that might be a good way to sneak in a couple of positions if someone else later on messes up theirs.
Well, here we go. Out of turn 16, let's take you on a tour of Barcelona. A very long straight here, the pit straight, as this will be the one and only timed lap for VRM Racing. James de Havilland at the wheel of the 349 McLaren as we thunder down into turn 1. Brake as late as you dare for turn 1 and 2, the S section. And then it's up the hill, climbing all the time through turn 3. During the race, you're going to see many opportunities at passing here, but in qualifying, you want to maximize it and get to the curb on the outside as quickly as possible, and then hard braking zone entering the second sector. Turn 4, a tricky corner. You can't see the apex because it's over a hill, and then down into turn 5, the first true hairpin of the track so far, continuing downhill. So easy to mess that turn up, so easy to run wide or go a little bit too shallow. Turn 6 and 7 and 8, back up the hill, a mini S section, a little bit of a chicane perhaps, and then turn 9, another blind corner. Aim for the styrofoam and miss the sand trap. That's all you got to do as we exit the second sector and the dreaded turn number 10, the corner that gives people chills and nightmares when they think about going wide there. Excellently handled by de Havilland. Turn 12, another fantastic corner and easy to overdrive. Didn't do it on this occasion, did de Havilland. Turn 13, turning into the bike chicane section. Turn 14 and 15, you want to hit the curb, but don't hit the sausage on the inside. And here, in a good setup car, you can absolutely cane it and come back to the line. What was the lap for de Havilland? It was a 43.410, and we don't know how good that is until some other cars come through, but I would say that was a really decent lap from de Havilland there.
I'd be comfortable with that lap, especially coming from de Havilland's position. They finished 10th in the 30-minute qualifying session, and I think just to set a 143.4, it's fairly low, and it will give them an opportunity that if someone else messes up on their lap, it'll just be good enough to push them up through the pack there. So honestly, for a first lap from de Havilland, I think that is absolutely amazing. We're going to see now if Max Wodgner in the 992 can match it or possibly go faster. Of course, we've said that Max Wodgner is currently filling in today for George Boothby and Malinowski, and now we'll see how they fare in the Super after finishing 9th in the 30-minute qualifying session. We're coming down into the first corner. You want to be as much on the green as possible here so you get a good turn, and it looks like Wodgner could have pushed it maybe a little bit more there, but taking the curbs a little, it's going to maybe navigate their way through turn 3 here. Will be on the throttle as soon as possible so that they can throw the car round and ready for turn 4 here. Going under the bridge, they're going to put their foot on the brake. will navigate their way around the corner. Now, as you said, Jesse, the next one is actually a blind apex. You come right over the top of the corner here, and you just have to sort of guess where your foot is on the brakes, but it looks like Wojna has sent it as late as possible, going into the left-hander here, and will run out onto the curb. The next session, I've already said, you can invalidate your lap if you take it too tightly. It looks like Wojna is going to play it safe, though, and not cut too much of the curb off, which will keep them in the valid section. Something we talked about is key in this Super Pole lap. And again here, they want to keep it off the curb too much to avoid invalidating that lap by taking it too wide. But so far from Wojna, it's looked like a really good lap. Again, we're going to break onto the bridge. Really hard to get the apex of this corner right. I always struggle to find it, but you just have to sort of hit the curb and keep the momentum through. Going into the final couple of corners, we've talked about already, Jesse, just how important turns 14 to 16 are. Well, we're going to see how the 992 deals with it. It looks like Wojna's got a good exit there here. Just need to make sure they hit the apexes here. A little bit of a tap on the apex there, but it's going to be good enough to get on start finish straight. Hopefully now they can just accelerate on. We'll see what their time's going to be in a minute. They're about to cross the line, but from Wojna, it looks like a fairly solid lap there, and it's going to be a 1:43.105. That will put them on provisional pole.
That was a pretty good lap from Wojna there. I will say that might take some beating. Would anybody dare go into the 42s with one lap of qualifying? I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out. Here is Tavinza Hackers Madhouse Racing 818. This BMW has done some damage in qualifying before. We'll see if they can continue that trend today. Looked like a decent enough start of the 16th turn. We'll see what this lap ends up looking like. It's our first look at a BMW in this session. Felix is going to mirror the Wojna line by taking a lot of curb on the entry of turn 1. No dramas there as we head up the hill to turn 3. Off the throttle there, just long enough to set the car. Doesn't go nearly as wide as some of the other cars will do, but goes wide on the entry into 4. They're going to diamond this corner off. This is the line that I use, actually. You get a very nice and narrow exit simply because setting up for this corner, it is beneficial to be as far to the right as humanly possible because you can do this, run off onto the curb. And now for the mini chicane as we head back up the hill. Will we hit the curb on the inside? We do. Do we clip the right side? We do, but we missed the sausage curb. That was absolutely brilliantly placed. And this right here, a nice run up. This is looking really rapid, folks. If you ask me, this car, it looks like it's on rails more than the first two. But just because it looks quick doesn't mean it is going to be. Just wide enough to hit the yellow anti-cut curb there. How tight are we going to cut this? Pretty nicely, I would say, and an excellent runoff using all of the room and space avoided. A little bobble there, hitting the sausage onto the inside and just parking it right over the curb, and that looked brilliant. If this is not pole position, I don't know what to say. It looked quick, but was it quick? It wasn't quick at all. A 43.740. Maybe it looked quick because it was a BMW. I have no idea, but that will put them bottom of the table of those that have qualified. Maybe I need new glasses, Tim.
I think it just goes to show how much you have to push the car at Spain. We said through turn 3 they weren't taking it as wide as some of the other cars, and whilst that is a good tactic you can use, try and get some speed just going in a straight line, it certainly is going to impede you because you're just not getting your foot on the throttle early enough. Well, we're going to see what Chris Corbin can do now in the turn 1 SSR racing team. Only just made it into the top 10 with a final flying lap that put them all the way up to, I believe, 6th place. No, it must have been 7th actually. But it was a great final lap from Chris Corbin to put them up into this top 10. Now they're going to see how high they can qualify in the Super Pole. A good turn 1 will see him just throw themselves into that first corner. Now they're going to ride onto the second curb. And again, Jesse, this is where I think you can make or break a lap. You've got to nail the throttle placement on the exit of turn 3. And I think Corbin there might have slid a little bit, which will slightly impede their time later on in the lap. But we'll see how they continue now going around this corner. Again, you can just hear the car really struggling for grip and is sliding about on the rear wheels here. So Corbin just needs to get a bit more hold of the car, try and stable it up a little bit if they want to keep this lap in a good time. But so far, I'd say it's been a good enough start to keep them fighting for a decent position. Coming through the chicane here, they're going to slide out again, go a little wide, but it's not going to be enough to invalidate the lap. They've managed to keep it enough on the road, so that'll be good for them. They're going to slightly tap the inside curb here and will avoid the sand on the exit. So a fairly standard lap so far, but what I want to see, Jesse, is more pushing from the 101. It just feels like they've been so conservative into these corners, and they've even slid through some of them. It doesn't feel like they've really pushed the car enough to the limit here. We're going into the final sector now. We've got the hairpin. Going to hit the apex here as Corbin coming into the final couple of corners. We need to make sure we nail these. We've talked so much about how important it is, and they're going to hit the inside curb there, unsettling the car, and that might be the end of a good lap for Corbin, sliding through the final two turns onto the start-finish straight. I think Corbin here might have been wishing for a bit more out of this lap. We'll see what the time says, and that will put them in last place currently. Not the lap Corbin was hoping for there, 143.8, and I've got to say, Jesse, that BMW did not look stable throughout the entirety of that lap.
No, it didn't. And hitting the curb, sliding out, it was never going to be as quick as they would want it to be. But if you are turn one SSR, you take that with a grain of salt, considering they started 27th in the 24th Spa. Some of their qualifying has not been where they would like it. So even if they don't get better than 10th, it's still a remarkable starting spot for the Turn 1 SSR team. Turning our focus to Race Car Jesus, Martin Lawrence and the Connection Lost Racing 404. They've been a threat all season long for the pole in the silver class. They've been a threat all season long for the win in silver. This could be an exciting run to watch in thundering down the massive front straight here at Barcelona, getting as far over to the left as you dare for turns 1 and 2. It's all about how you set up this S section, and it's all about what you do here to get set up for turn 3. You've always got to turn further left than you feel like you have to, because sitting on the apex of 3 is not the quickest way around. Running out turn 3, that was well done by Lawrence here. What strategy will he use into 4? He's going to stay nice and tight and run out to the left, which means he's going to have to very quickly transition over to the right side for turn 5, which he does. Staying close to the apex, taking the shortest distance around turn 5, and down toward 6. 6 not an issue. It's 7 and 8 that are the biggest issues. Staying off the curb on the inside. He's going to run over the outside curb quite heavily. That could play havoc with the McLaren chassis. It doesn't on this occasion. Turn 9, using the runoff room. It looked like that could have been a little bit more optimized in my opinion, but beyond that, exiting the second sector in turn 10, the turn that makes sim racers wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Excellently navigated. 11 into 12, a little bit of oversteer, and that's going to completely blow this lap apart, I'm pretty sure, as that little bit of grip loss is so common in T12, and I think we've seen it bite CLR here, making up for it maybe a little bit in 14 and 15. Looked a little sloppy in sector 3. What's the time going to be for CLR? Is it going to threaten? And it will. It will threaten the silver class, taking provisional pole in silver, a 43.230. And my goodness, what might have been had that correction not been required into turn 12.
That was looking like a really strong lap from Lawrence there, and that slight mishap in the final couple of corners will have cost them, I think, pole position so far. But we'll see what Schaefer can do to answer. Now, Schaefer was someone who we were watching from the beginning of this qualifying, looked very, very strong in the practice, continued to look strong at the beginning of qualifying, and only really slipped down at the end, but still keeping up with the top 5 was something to brag about for Schaefer here. They're going to ride onto the left-hand side. I think they could have taken a lot more curb than that at the beginning, Jesse, and that will compromise the exit slightly as we come into this next corner, turn 3. Got to be on the throttle as soon as you possibly can without pushing it too wide. It sounded like Schaefer there was on it fairly decently, although not swinging as wide as Lawrence went last lap. So we'll see how much speed they carried through here. Coming into turn 4, they're going to take the tighter line rather than the diamond line, which means they're going to have to adjust at the end here, and then they're going to look to cut in onto the left for this next corner, and then they're going to ride out onto the outside curb again. I'm going to say it, Jesse, doesn't look like they're taking as much curb as they probably could. I think there's been a recurring in this session is people just playing it safe in these super pole laps, but Schaefer, they're going to take a lot of the outside curb of the chicane. Now going through the fast right-hander, will want to avoid going too wide here as they almost touch the sand, but will manage to keep it on the track and keep their lap valid. Now we're coming into that final sector, and we know how tricky this can be. It can make or break the lap. You need to make sure you do not lose the grip of the car here, and so far Schaefer's managed it well. Slight slide of the rear wheels, but nothing too drastic to take away a lot of time here. Coming into the final section of corners, avoid the inside curb. Gone a little bit wide. We'll have to readjust before the final two. Again, though, missing both the sausage curbs. Sliding slightly, though, on the final corner, which will compromise the straight, but overall a good lap for Schaefer. I expect this to be a middle time here, but it's going to be enough for provisional pole. The first 142 we see of the day, a 142.855. A brilliant lap for Schaefer, puts them on pole in the Super Pole session.
My goodness, that was brilliant from T3 Motorsport Black. They're a team that you normally think of as being excellent in the race and decent at qualifying, but today they were excellent in qualifying. Is that a good omen for the race, I wonder, for T3 Motorsport Black, the 411? I thought they were going to hand, I thought the field was going to hand Yaz Heat another surprise pole position, but no, not the case, as we will have our third different pole sitter this season. Guaranteed. The question remains, who will it be? Will it be T3 Motorsport Black? Could it be Forza Italia? Adam Dubiel behind the wheel of the number 500 Ferrari. Always a threat in the race, always a threat in qualifying as well. The very nicely colored Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo car going around turns 1, 2, and 3. Our only Ferrari in the qualifying session today. What can Dubiel do? It looked pretty decent through the first couple of sectors, first couple of corners, I should say, as we make our way into sector number 2. Nothing that I can personally see by the naked eye here that would indicate that this lap is going wrong for them. Sometimes the Ferraris can have interesting handling characteristics over the curbs. Nothing happening here. Absolutely rock solid is the prancing horse. But looking very nice doing it as well, hitting all the curbs in all the right places, not going too far in the process. Now, work to do as we exit the second sector. Turn 10 beckons. What will we see through 10, 11, and 12, where a couple of cars have went wrong today? Dubiel trying to make sure that they do not run afoul of any of these curbs, and they won't. How's the handling? Watch the hands. Perfect. A little bit of counter correction there, but other than that, pretty spot on, I would say. Taking a little bit of curb, entering 13, now 14 and 15. This looks very tidy to me, which either means it's safe or it's really quick. What's it gonna be for Forza Italia? Coming to the line, they qualify P1 of 42.735 for Forza Italia e-racing. A brilliant lap. It looked safe. It was actually really quick.
What a beautiful lap from the Ferrari there, and Dubiel's going to be smiling from cheek to cheek with that performance. I mean, just to have a 142 on the board in the Super Bowl, that in itself is absolutely amazing, but to be currently on provisional pole, that's going to be a real good boost, especially for the number 500. They have performed so well throughout the entirety of today, and honestly, Jesse, I think that's possibly going to be the best lap we see so far, but we've got 3 people left now to set a good lap. We're about to watch Fisher coming through the final set of corners, goes a little bit wide over the curb of the final corner, but it doesn't matter yet as they swing onto the start-finish straight. Fisher needs to get a really good lap here to answer back. They were playing with that pole position in the 30 minutes with McCauley and Riley, and they're going to want to secure a really good time in this Super Pole, perhaps using the most curb we've seen out of all of the drivers. Fisher goes wide into turn 1. It's going to be a lot of curb, but that's going to really help with the exit into turn 3. Not quite on the throttle as early as I'd like them to be there. Looks like they might have slightly got a bit too close to the apex a bit too early, but Fisher now going into turn 4. We'll see what line they take. The BMWs, Jesse, have favoured the diamond line, but it looks like Fisher is going to take it a bit tighter here through turn 4, be a bit different than the other BMWs, but into the left-hander again, taking it very beautifully, running off wide onto the curbing, using up as much of the track room as possible. Coming into the chicane, I reckon we'll see them tap the left and then really take a chunk out of the outside, which is what they've done. And I think the real difference here between the drivers that we're currently watching and the ones that started off the Super Bowl is how far they are pushing out onto the curbs. It's where you find the time in Spain, where we're coming into that final sector for Fisher here. Going to break just underneath the bridge and will take the apex of this corner. Going into this final sector, they're going to want to not lose the car. Watch the wheel, make sure that they don't have to adjust too much. It looks like a good exit from Fisher there, not too much adjusting mid-corner, which will help them gain the time in this final sector. A good final set of corners here will secure them a decent time, and it looks like Fisher's really going to push it out onto that final curb. Hits the sausage and will exit onto the start-finish straight. Is this enough to challenge the number 500 Ferrari? We're about to find out. It's only going to be enough for P3. Currently, that was a time of a 142.9, so broke into the 142s, but not enough to put them on pole.
Well, for Butterfly Effect Esports, for a team that just barely made it into Super Pole in the 24, they will be chuffed with that, I would say. A potential top 5 starting spot for them, third currently. They will enjoy that. Well, Jonathan Riley, Volante Racing, talk about always being a threat. This has been one of the only threats to Yas Heat all season in qualifying and on the racetrack. The first 12 hours of the 24 of Spa was a pitcher's duel between Volante and Yas Heat. Looking to one-up them here again, maybe, will be Jonathan Riley. Interesting line there into turn 1. I don't think we've seen that so far. Didn't use all of the runoff room and sort of cut off the entry of turn 1. And look at this, completely running as wide as humanly possible was Riley. It is a line you can take. Normally you see that in a more defensive use than on a quick lap. I'm not sure if maybe they just got that a little bit wrong or if that was intentional. Either way, down through turn 4 into 5. I'd say it's close to the apex. That has been the quicker of the two lines, I'll say. Diamonding off the corner has not worked too well today for the teams that have attempted that. Into turn number 7 and 8, back up the hill. Turn 9, very important right now. Turning in, not even touching the curb there, running as wide as you humanly dare. Exit the second sector. Turn 10, also super important. How much curb are we using here? Not very much. The run out, almost all of it there. Monster over the curb, nope, just gets it a little bit and might have not been set up for 12, as well as some of the other cars, I might say. Turn 13, also not getting as close to the inside curb as some of the other cars. I wonder if that's just precaution, considering it is a McLaren after all, running incredibly wide out of 15, around 16 very tightly through the run out. I have no idea if this was a quick lap or not. It was a quick lap, a 42.835 for Volante Racing in the McLaren. An excellent lap, just shy of pole position. Forza Italia lives to duke it out with the hashtag Blame Mike Jones team. Tim Peck, one last bullet, one last shot, and it's Joe McCauley. Take it away.
Joe McCauley was the pole position after the 30 minutes qualifying. Now they have to get a time to beat the 142.7 that Dubil set in the number 500 Ferrari. Can Joe McCauley retake that pole position, or will we see a pole position for Dubil here? Well, we're about to find out. Joe McCauley now onto the start-finish straight. Had a good exit from the final set of corners, which he talked about how critical it is here, and you can just see how much of the curb McCauley's using there. Went as wide as they could onto the green stuff. A great set of turn 1 and 2, and now into turn 3. Really hitting the inside curb. Might slightly compromise the exit here, but McCauley will push it wide as possible coming into turn 4. Now we'll see what route they take. Diamond hasn't won out for today, but McCauley will use the Diamond exit to see whether they can keep it tight coming into the next corner here. Well, we're going to find out just how good that sector went in a bit. But riding again on the curbs, McCauley's taken a lot of curbs so far in the Bentley here, both inside and out. It's a great lap so far as we come into the chicane section. Slightly hitting the inside, going to really ride on the outside there. Possibly close to invalidating, but will keep it valid as we go into the sweeping right-hander here. Hooks the side of the curb, which will carry them around nicely, making sure that they do not hit the sand on the exit. And so far, we've got a very strong-looking valid lap from McCauley. Going to break underneath the tunnel, but a little too late. Looks like they might have messed up the apex there as they go completely wide and miss the optimal point. Is that going to be enough for Dubil to stay ahead? Well, we'll see as McCauley now comes into the final section of corners. Looks a little bit unstable there, but not uncompromised as they hit the inside curb of the corner number 13. That might be compromising their lap here as McCauley looks to be struggling to keep it all together. Coming onto the start-finish straight here, has McCauley messed up a little too much in the final sector here? We're about to find out as they cross the line, and it was not a good lap from McCauley. Only enough for P5, which means the number 500 Forza Italia Ferrari Dubil will take pole position for your 6 hours of Spain.
Absolutely incredible. For the first time in the 2022 World Tour Championship, folks, we have a silver team who has qualified on overall pole in the Super Pole. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Dubil and Forza Italia.pl Esports for e-racing in the 500 Ferrari, the only Ferrari inside the top 10. They've finally done it. They've been all over the top 10 all season, and they finally get it done. Riley will get the points for the Pro Championship for qualifying on pole of Pro, but Dubil will get the nicest view of any team. Adam was in the chat saying that didn't feel like a quick lap to him, felt like a 43. It looked very safe to us as well, but it was just so smooth by Adam Dubil getting the job done. Dubil, Riley, Schaefer, Fisher, McCauley, the top 5, Wajna, Lawrence, de Havilland, Tavinza Hacker, and Corbin, your top 10. 5 silvers and 5 pros, and what a super pole we witnessed here. And I can only imagine the 6 hours is going to be just as close as that. Literally a second between the top 10, and you have to go all the way outside the top 3 before it gets bigger than just about a 10th. Tim Peck, excellent consistency in driving. Every driver set a competitive time.
I just think it has been a beautiful performance all round today. A big handout to Dubil here for what was just a phenomenal qualifying session. Straight away from the 30 minutes, they looked comfortable. They were setting good laps. They put themselves right up the top of the leaderboard in that safe zone, which secured them into the Super Pole. And then coming into that Super Pole session, we were saying how key it is to be consistent here and not push the car too hard, just to make sure you get that lap in. And Dubil found that perfect balance of safe and consistent with enough speed to secure themselves the pole position. Honestly, a brilliant drive all round those. Every driver puts in a valid lap time and a competitive one at that. But I think what we have to take away from today, Jesse, is just goes to show how much you can really play in that Super Bowl session, but then it goes to show how much is too much. We saw a lot of people had really good looking laps going into that final sector, though, either hit the inside curb, maybe lost a bit of grip, and that was enough to ruin what could have been a pole position. So if there's anything to take away from stage, Jesse, it's that you've got to go fast, but you've got to be safe as well.
Well, Grant Willamot said that Joe McCauley was basically going for broke. It was going to be a low 42 or it was going to be 10th. It was neither of those things, though. In the end, you could definitely tell that Joe was pushing. But let's talk to our pole position winner, the Forza Italia driver, Adam Dubil. You've won your first pole in the World Tour. Overall, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. To be honest, I didn't expect that I could put this all together in Super Bowl session. I did laps like this in practice, but you know, practice is just the practice. But the Super Bowl session is quite different. As I said in the chat, it wasn't felt too quick. I thought it would be 33-0, something like that. When I crossed the line, I was really happy and surprised.
Adam, it couldn't have come at a better time. You're sitting third in the silver championship. You need every point that you can get. There's several teams behind you,
Yeah.
VRM and GC Racing, who are very close. This was exactly, in my opinion, this is exactly what Forza Italia needed. And now you've got points before the race started. You have the best seat in the house for the start of the race. Could you potentially win this race overall now, do you think?
I can say right now because it is highly possible that I will not take part next Saturday. So my teammates will gonna do the job. But I hope even if not the win in overall, maybe in silver class will be possible. We'll see next week.
So you're saying if they lose, it's their fault because you did your job.
Yeah, I did my job. They will gonna have to do their job, but I have no expectations, to be honest, because in this season, actually in each race we had some problems, issues, technical or internet connection. So no expectations. Of course, being on pole is great feeling, and I already regret that I can't do it next Saturday.
Tim Peck, do you have anything for our pole sitter for the 6 hours of Barcelona?
Well, obviously in the Super Bowl, you have no idea what that time is going to be when you cross the start finish line. It could be anywhere from a 1:42 to a 1:44. So, what I want to know is how you just handle that pressure throughout the lap. Obviously, you mentioned that you didn't think it was going to be as quick as it was, but going through the lap, what thoughts are going through your head as you're taking each corner, just in regards to how you think the lap is going in general?
Slide as less as possible, as little as possible, because actually I don't like Barcelona, but I'm quite consistent on this track, and maybe you guys have seen in actual quali session that my best lap was actually my first valid lap. Then I had some better occasions to do a better lap, but always something went wrong in last sector. So I knew I am consistent. So the only thing to do was not to mess up something too big. I knew if I do proper lap, the time would should be okay, and that happened. Really. Maybe it wasn't a rocket lap, but it was consistent, good without big mistakes. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
Well, the lap looked amazing from where I'm sitting, and a big well done on getting that pole position. It must feel brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
Adam, congratulations on pole position. It was one of those laps that just looks so smooth in comparison. And you know what Jeremy Clarkson always used to say, sometimes when it looks slower, consistent, it's actually really fast. It certainly was today. And finally, an overall pole, a deserving pole winning team, if I say so myself, in Forza Italia. Congratulations on the achievement.
Yeah, thank you once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Dubil in Forza Italia.pl e-racing on pole position for the 6 hours of Barcelona in 1 week time. Well, Tim Peck, it was a very spirited qualifying and it did not disappoint. We had a surprise pole sitter and just excellent job by everybody getting to the line. I think this might be the first pole session or super pole session this year that we've had where all 10 teams set a valid lap within a second of one another. We've had some where some multiple cars have failed to set a time and a couple where the car at the end either had an accident or was quite slow. And it's going to be close like that. I think it's going to be close like that in the race. Barcelona always delivers high drama and action, and I think we're going to get just that next.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens at Barcelona next week. Like I said, controversial, but it is one of my favorite tracks. It's of course Competizione. It's the technicality of the mid sectors and just the amount of overtakes that can happen in these GT3 cars. There's a lot of places to do so, and I just think it brings a lot of action to the table. And as we've just seen in that Super Pole qualifying, anything can happen. I'm excited to see just how that Forza Italia team gets off at the start, because the Ferrari, it's not that good going. Once you get onto that start finish straight, when the race starts, the acceleration, you're wishing for a little bit more there, but I'm interested to see just how they deal with it, and I can't wait to find out the results of next week's race.
Well, folks, you've seen the prelude. All that's left to do is the race. Round 5 of 6 of the World Tour 2022, right here in 1 week's time. The 6 hour Barcelona, the shortest endurance race of the year in the World Tour. Next Saturday, like, subscribe, hit the bell for more GT action. We'll be back with you a little bit later this evening for the continuation of the Night Owl Championship. And on Monday, the British Masters Championship continues. And on Thursday, this coming week, the Thursday Championship, Touring Cars and GT4s, are going to start up. And Mr. Tim Peck is going to be on that broadcast with Mr. Christian Stricker as well. There's still time to sign up for that championship, get your pre-queue in for the start of the season. And as a reminder, you can join any championship in progress by going to our website, racerci.com, and signing up. It'll give you all the information you need to know. And don't worry about what your skill level is, because we have splits for all skill levels here at RCI. Go to racerci.com and get started with that. We'd be nowhere as well if we didn't thank our partners. RaceDepartment.com, your source of sim racing news and information. AK Informatica for providing our server solutions. Driver 61, you can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code in the description. Driver coaching can and will make you a better racing driver. Certainly worked for a lot of the admins here at RCI, who I can personally vouch for are now quicker. We have the trophies to prove it. Fanatec.com. Feel free to use our affiliate link when making purchases of quality sim racing hardware over at fanatec.com. Doesn't cost you a thing to use our affiliate link. It tells them that we sent you, and it may help us with things like server costs in the future when you do. Simracing.gp. If you're tired of pub racing or just can't get enough racing, join a community on simracing.gp. Get racing on the regular today. Signing up, of course, is completely free. Tim Peck, final thoughts on Super Bowl today. Me personally, just mind blown.
It's been phenomenal. The performance all round has been amazing, and there's been so many surprising changes. I was not expecting that when I joined you in the booth here today. So I'm overall very happy with how that turned out, and it's just made me even more excited to see how the race turns out.
Well, Forza Italia won the battle today. Who will win the war in 1 week's time? Only time will tell. Until then, of course, we want to thank everybody here at RCI, the broadcast team, the staff, and of course, all of our lovely stewards who made today possible. Big thank you to everyone who has helped us out. And of course, we will be back live with you a little later tonight with Night Owl Racing. Until then, we'll see you next time. Have a good night.